Okay, it is now 5 o'clock. I will call the meeting of the Waxahachie Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. Please let the record show that all 7 trustees are present and that this meeting has been duly called, and notice that this meeting has been duly posted for time and manner required by law. At this time, we will go into closed session according to Section 551.001 et sec, the Texas Government Code. It is now 5 p.m. 5:36, we're going to reconvene back into open session. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Rogers to lead us in our invocation, followed by Mr. Calden with our pledges.
Please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the ability to come and gather in the free society and make decisions for the betterment of our school district. Please be with the ones, the families, the people of Louisiana. Help them to get through this disaster. Be with the first responders that are there to help. And just be with us tonight, all the people in this room, the teachers, the staff, administrators, trustees, that we make decisions based on what's best for our district and our children. In your Heavenly Father's name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, our next item is our open forum. This is the portion of the board meeting where the board receives input from patrons. Each person who addresses the board will have 5 minutes to speak on his or her issue. Because of posting requirements of the Open Meetings Act, board members will not ask questions of the patron nor answer any questions posed by the patron. No action can be taken on any issue presented during the patron comment section of the board meeting. Patrons addressing the board will be notified when they're approaching approximately 60 seconds of their allotted time. When I call your name, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please. Mr. Chris Wright.
Good evening. Chris Wright, 808 West Marvin, Waxahachie. Thank you for your time. I just want to take a quick second. My wife is a retired teacher from the school, and my daughter is currently still a teacher at Coleman. So they both asked me to come up and speak on their behalf. My wife last year had COVID for 2 months, and luckily it fell during the Christmas time, so part of it was before and part of it was after, but that 10-day period where the school still paid them for not working was greatly appreciated. However, now my daughter, she's 7 months pregnant. She's going to already have to take her time off for pregnancy leave, but she's got COVID. And so she's going to miss that. And her young husband works for the Catholic Church, so I can tell you he doesn't get paid a whole lot either. So I just wanted to come up here and ask you guys to support that additional pay for COVID if the teachers do get COVID at school, because as we all know, it's sort of bouncing around with all the kids this year. It didn't last year, but this year it is. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Wright. Okay, next item is our human resources. Consideration and possible action to approve amended compensation plan related to instructional support. Ms. James, you taking that one?
Good evening, board. I want to ask that you approve the personnel report. One consideration for amending the compensation plan for the instructional staff. We did have an error where we did not use the TASB on the last report, so we did adjust that. And then we're asking for a position for a job coach for Global High School.
That job coach position is to support some of our more profoundly disabled students in the 18-plus unit, is what the purpose of that is. So we've seen a pretty significant increase. We've seen a pretty significant increase in the numbers of students, and so that's a definite need.
Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve Human Resources, item A and B, as presented by Mrs. James. Motion by Mr. Schofield,
Second.
second by Ms. Starnader. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monica.
Okay, our next item is our public hearing. So tonight, we will be holding a public hearing to discuss the proposed 2021-2022 budget and the 2021 tax rate. We will invite the public to approach the podium and provide input to the subject at hand. The public hearing will begin with a presentation by Mr. Calden, Assistant Superintendent of Business and Finance. Calden?
Thanks, sir. As you just stated, it is a public hearing, so we can skip that slide. For tonight, we come at the conclusion of our budget development and timeline, and we'll ask for your approval of a budget that will start September 1, and then adoption of a tax rate, and those will be later on in the evening. So kind of a timeline of what we've done. You know, we usually start the budget process in January and in February when we start meeting with campuses and departments and getting from them their needs, be they person or personnel units, or be they additional budget requests to address additional concerns either on their campus or in their department. Then we kind of go on, have those meetings through February and even March, and then in April we get the certified estimate of property values from the appraisal district. That's when we really start getting a better idea of where revenue is going to be, and so we develop those revenue estimates in May and June, and you'll remember we started having those meetings, budget workshop type meetings where we start talking priorities and mandates or must-haves within that budget process. We did that in May and in June, and then in July we get those final certified values from the appraisal district, which we turn around and send into TEA, and they give us a maximum tax rate that we can adopt. And we start really finalizing that budget process and working on that budget book. This year we distributed that budget book in the first part of August, around August 9th, and we posted the proposed budget at the same time, a statutory requirement that has to be on our website. And then we published in the newspaper for August 18th that we'd be having this meeting with public hearing tonight. Here we are tonight. And then, like I say, September 1, that budget will go into effect with the new fiscal year. As a reminder, the identified budget priorities were a minimum of a 5% pay increase for all employees on the auxiliary pay scale, and then to add $1 million into fund balance. And then the priorities, the things that we were trying really hard to also include, create staff positions for an expected 600 student increase, implement the salary adjustments identified by the TASB survey, and then a 2% pay increase for all non-auxiliary staff. As we kind of go through revenue expectations for the year, this year we do not have a hold harmless from the state, so that is one consideration that's going into this budget that was not really there last year. We had already started hearing some of the talks of hold harmless, but there are none at this point. Current enrollment as of earlier today is 10,077 students. Our expected enrollment or expected ADA is about 10,040. So we're right at that point, but that's assuming about 96% attendance. So I'm going to really want an enrollment somewhere closer to 10,400 students. So we still have a little bit of work to do. It's not unheard of at this point to be a little bit behind that estimate. Generally around Labor Day, we see a little bit of a bump and an increase in students. So it's kind of the goal, kind of the hope at this point, but we're in range to where the budget is still, as presented, is still a viable budget. A little chart to show you kind of the growth in revenue in the general fund. A little bit of a larger bump in that darker green line, that state revenue line, in the 1920 fiscal year. That would have been right after House Bill 3. You see that it continues to be a significant portion of the budget. There's a yellow little bar at the top, which is federal revenues. That's the SHARS program. It's not a significant component of the general fund, but that's why you see a little bit of that yellow line up there. It's no more than $2 million in any given year. Not to blow that off as insignificant, but out of $107 million, $2 million is not an overarching driver of that fund. We do need to have a discussion about property values. This is one of the first indicators. Property values continue to go up significantly. This year, another increase of roughly 12+% in property values. That blue line is a little weird, a little funny, but it's to show you the percent increase in net taxable values against the actual net taxable value amount. So net taxable values were right at about $6 billion as a district with a B as in boy. And you see significant growth over the last couple of years. 2018, a little bit of a blip where it was under 10% growth. Every other year has been over 10% property value growth in net taxable values for each of the last 5 years. So that's pretty significant. Being driven by new construction and then, of course, rising in existing values. We do expect this to continue. I can't tell you I expect it to continue at 14% annual growth, but I do expect it to be at least minimum about 6% growth going forward. That's just a number that I'm anticipating. That's as of looking at demographer study and kind of talking with the city about the number of permits that have been filed for new home construction. So there's significant demand out there. There's significant growth that's headed this way. I'm not going to ever tell you that I'm going to plan on it being 14, 15, 16% in any given year, because that just seems really hyper and really extreme, but I do expect it to at least be 6% going forward. Overview of the M&O budget for the year. There is included in the M&O is a 5% increase for all paraprofessional and auxiliary staff. I know that the mandate was 5% for auxiliary staff, but when we get to looking at it, historically, we've included paraprofessionals with the auxiliaries when we do those pay raises, so we lump those again together this year. So paraprofessionals, auxiliary, a 5% increase, a 2% increase for all other staff members. We did address the salary adjustments that were mentioned by or recommended by TASB in their survey. We've made plans to add staff members for 600 kid student growth, and we've allocated $1.3 million for land purchase. So that million that we talked about adding to fund balance, the offset of that is putting it into an account to purchase land, because that land comes out of fund balance, so it is the offset. So we did put $1.3 million into the budget this year to purchase land, as we see. The chart on the right is just showing the tax rate. It's showing roughly a 21-cent decrease over the last 4 years in the M&O tax rate from $1.17. And then with House Bill 3 for 1920, you start seeing that rate come down with revenue compression or tax rate compression. And so it was $1.06, and then it moved to 98 cents. And this year it will flatten out at 96 cents. The reason I say flatten out, one provision of House Bill 3, we continue to reduce our M&O tax rate, but it doesn't have to go below 90% of the highest rate in the state. So a little bit convoluted, but the floor on that is currently 96.03, and that's what the proposed M&O rate is for the year. If the state comes back through legislative action, mandates some more compression, you'll see that rate go down again, but it's not required to go down, and actually there are some drawbacks to it going down at this point if we wanted to keep lowering it. On the interest and sinking side of things.
Ryan, I want to make one comment about
Yes, sir.
that, and I think this is really important as y'all talk to patrons, et cetera. One of the things that happens is when we lower the amount of revenue that's coming in from our local sources, when we increase the amount that comes in from local sources, they lower our state revenue proportionately. Many people don't realize that. They think that, well, if the property values are going up, we're getting, basically, we're going to get what we're going to get on a per pupil allocation. And a lot of people think that, well, when property values raise, we're going to see all that money. And that is not the way Texas school finance works. And I think that's a really important thing for people to know. So, thank you.
Good point. On the interest and sinking side of things, Board, we asked for your authority back in June to issue some refunding bonds, and we just delivered on those refunding bonds to save taxpayers $9.5 million in future interest costs. Some of that is with $2.5 million. We are buying down, we're paying off some of those bonds early, so the true cost of interest avoidance, if we want to put it in those terms, would be about $7 million for taxpayers. Part of that is because we're going to advance some payments. So if you remember, our level debt structure was about $17 million a year. Next year, it's going to be $22 million. So we're able to accomplish that because of the low interest rate environment and because we had about $4 million in INS fund balance. We're going to spend down some of that INS fund balance to pay off some of this debt early and then refinance some of the remaining debt that's out there, kind of shortening those maturity spans. So overall, we're going to end up saving taxpayers $7 million worth of interest. So just kind of an update on where we are with that refunding that you approved back in June. There's no proposed change to the INS rate that continues to fund this refunding opportunity, and then we're going to continue monitoring. We know through a change in federal law that we can't do advance refundings outside of 90 days of maturity. We're still looking at some possible options coming forward in the next couple of years, but we're not at that point yet, so it'll be driven by interest rate at that time when we get there. So still looking for those opportunities to save additional resources. Total tax rate. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, has been lowered almost 21 cents since the 18-19 school year. And House Bill 3 created the Formula Transition Grant. Waxahachie ISD is a receiver of the Formula Transition Grant. I tell you this to say that amount's going to fluctuate from $2 million to $5 million is kind of my best guess. But that does end at the end of the 23-24 school year. So there are some opportunities for us between now and then to either seek an extension of that funding or to tighten our belt a little more, knowing full well that we will be looking at about $5 million that we will have to close the gap for the 24-25 school year. The chart on the right shows you the tax rate over time. That's stacked with the M&O rate on bottom, INS rate on top. So that was $1.5539 back in 17-18, and this year the proposed tax rate is $1 and change. $34.42, I believe, is the right number. And I hope it's on one of these slides, but it's not. Anyway, with that quick overview of kind of the budget process and where we are, and I'll turn it over, Mr. President, for public comments.
Okay. At this time, are there any individuals that would wish to speak concerning the proposed budget or tax rate? Going once? Twice? Okay. We will now close the public hearing portion of the meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Calden.
Mr. President, I just would like to say thank you to Ryan and to his entire team. There's a ton of work that goes into what you've received tonight. And the other thing is the number of templates that our CFO gets from the state to rework the estimates throughout that process. It's unbelievable. It's a very convoluted process, and so really appreciate y'all's hard work.
Okay, our next item is our consent agenda. We have items A through L. And at this time, if there's any individual item that would like to be removed, I would entertain that idea. If not, we can have a motion to approve consent agenda items A through L.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McCutcheon,
Second.
second by Mr. Rogers. Is there any discussion on consent agenda items A through L?
Yes, ma'am. I do want to point out that items F through J are all related items to ESSER 3 funds. So the ESSER 3 funds are the federal funds that we've received as a district for the purpose of closing the learning gaps that have been created by COVID. And they have been statewide, nationwide, really worldwide. Those are real gaps. So you see a number of resources that we are purchasing in consent agenda that are related specifically to ESSER 3 monies.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor for consent agenda items A through L, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, moving into our action items. Consideration with possible action to adopt the 2021-2022 fiscal budgets for general fund, debt service fund, and child nutrition fund. Calden, you a busy man tonight.
It's a very boring summary slide of the information that I believe was on page 14 of the budget books that we handed out previously. If not, it's somewhere in and around that area. The budgets for the general fund, total revenue is $107,493,760. It is a balanced budget presented for the general fund. Debt service fund revenues of $22.1 million, expenditures of $22.3 million. So even with that planned spending of $2.5 million, this fund's going to it's not budgeted to come anywhere close to spending all that $2.5 million. So it is looking about a $200,000 deficit in the INS fund, which is really good. It keeps the fund healthy and it affords us other opportunities going forward. Child Nutrition Fund, balanced budget of $4.866 million as well on that end.
Okay, I entertain a motion to approve action item A as presented by Mr. Collin. Motion by Ms. Kriegel. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Schofield. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Action item B, consideration of possible action to approve an ordinance to adopt the 2021 tax rates, M&O rate of .9603 and INS rate of .3839 with a total tax rate of 1.3442 per $100 valuation.
Board, just to provide a little bit of clarity on this, this is a requirement of state statute. We are proposing a rate that's not the no new revenue rate, so it does look a little bit weird that we're lowering the rate 2 cents, yet it's still, the language for the motion includes a 5.6% increase in the tax rate. So just kind of an explanation on that. It is statute because our rate is proposed to be higher than the no new revenue rate.
Any other questions, Mr. Collin? Okay, I entertain a motion to approve action item B as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McCutcheon.
Second.
Second by Ms. Starnader. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Last action item, consideration with potential action to approve a resolution creating up to 80 hours of special paid sick leave for employees with confirmed diagnosis of COVID-19 during the 2021-2022 school year. Are you taking that one, Dr. Hollingsworth?
Yes, sir. We're bringing before you a motion for consideration. This gives 10 additional days for our staff for exactly what was discussed during open forum earlier, which is to address when an employee does have a confirmed diagnosis of COVID-19, we add these days in so that we're covering those and it doesn't impact their state leave, their personal days that they already have accrued.
Hold on. Is there any other questions for Dr. Hollingsworth?
Yeah, retro to the beginning of the year. Thank you for that.
Hold on,
Lee.
Mr. McCutcheon's got a question.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
Retro to the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve action item C. Motion by Ms. Kriegel. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Timmerman. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. And the last item will be a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Schofield. Second by Ms. Timmerman. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.